I want you to think about a question. What do you think is the scariest word in the boardrooms today? Any guesses? Any ideas? It's probably Donald Trump, but the second scariest word is disruption. Basically, executives these days are running scared of kids working in their garages, coming up with the next big idea, ready to disrupt their big businesses. People in their late 30s, 40s, switching careers, thinking about entrepreneurship, trying new things out, because the cost of failure has been dramatically reduced. So basically everybody these days is into disruption, and they are literally very scared. So a few examples, and we could talk about this for an entire day. But you've got companies in the transportation, you've got companies in the financial services industry, you've got companies in travel and leisure, and you've got companies in the educational space. And there's loads and loads of examples of these companies, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. And the point here is that it's not sporadic. It's not just here and there. It's absolutely everywhere. And it's absolutely all-encompassing. And it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Just to take this little example, Uber. And Uber is just at the beginning of an incredible journey. And it's already made massive waves. And if you listen to CEO, so basically the CEO of Twitter, the CEO of Uber, is saying that really big change will come when the sale of driving cars will come online, and when the entire fleet of Uber will be self-driving. And just to give you an idea of what that thing will entail, it's going to be a completely massive and overwhelming thing. These are some of the numbers from the US. So it will disrupt $200 billion car insurance industry. It will disrupt $100 billion car financing industry. But if you think about professional drivers, think about things that it's going to do to public transport, it's just going to be a huge wave. And if you listen to what Google and Tesla are saying, that the real self-driving cars will be on our streets by 2020, this disruption is going to touch so many places in our lives. But let's not talk about self-driving cars and Uber. What we're here to do is to talk about this. So did you notice something recently? Because I have and have been blown over by it. There is a pretty big trend among really significantly sized companies buying into design house and buying into the design idea, and design service companies indeed as well. Just a few of the things I've noticed this year. In May, McKinsey bought Luna, and to me that was like a stand up and notice moment, because McKinsey has always been a very strict, very process driven and very formulaic in many ways organization. So suddenly them buying into a design agency was a big mark of something big happening. You have this very important article in Forbes about how the so-called inverted commas useless arts degrees suddenly become the hottest thing in Silicon Valley. And we know this, of course. Accenture investing even more heavily into the design capability. So trying to build a design powerhouse, as how they're putting it on July 2015. And of course this, if you haven't seen this, actually is a big arrival. It's a pretty strikingly big arrival. September issue of Harvard Business Review, which is the equivalent of Science and Nature. So the mainstream business has finally caught up. It's great to see that, especially having worked on these issues. for 15 years. And see the business world finally noticing it and so putting it very much in the center of the discussion. So just a very quick recap of what's been happening in the last, say, three years. Facebook, Square, Accenture, Ericsson, Google, Adobe, IBM announcing a huge investment in design, as you know. Capital One buying £1, and recently McKinsey and Facebook. So there's something going on there. And so that got me thinking, why design and why now? And there's a few thoughts that I would like to share with you. Why I think it's happening now and it's happening to design. And one of the big things is that disruption, and multi-billion dollar disruption, driven primarily by design, and to a large extent by design, is here. So you have companies like Airbnb, established by designers. You have Slack. You have companies that are really strong in the area of user interface and user experience, and this being an absolutely vital component of their multi-billion dollar success. So there is a realization that absolutely this is here, it's here to stay, and it's got a massive design component. Another thing is speed. Speed. Things and change is accelerated to such an extent that the development cycles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So the methodologies and mindsets of design actually align very well with coming up with things as soon as possible and trying to optimize them in the process rather than having a few massive stage-gate processes that take ages to unfold. So very much this is in the design domain and very much driven by the speed. Then the big data. The previous speaker mentioned the big data being an element in the work. But I've worked for a company, Quality Engineers is the consultancy I work for. We work with large businesses like Sony and many of the Scandinavian companies, Carlsberg, and so on. And what we've noticed is that, yes, they are implementing big data, but big data on its own is in a very small insight, usually. And it's very much focused on either the past or at best at present. It very rarely comes up with hypotheses for the future. And designers are very much the creators of the future. So these big companies know this, that they need to have this component looking into the future rather than only looking at the past or the present. Consumer intimacy has become a paramount ingredient in companies' success. You cannot do it from a distance. You really need to engage with consumers, and particularly in our work we see millennials having a very clear expectations of companies becoming very close to them. And companies really need to get every little inch, every little centimeter of coming closer to the consumer in terms of understanding. It really counts. And this last centimeter of appreciation what people really want. And designers are very good at it. And there's this expectation that things should not only work beautifully, but they should also leave us aesthetically fulfilled. So there is this expectation now across the board, we see that, with things really working very well, but also giving us the sense of fulfillment. And this cannot be delivered without the designers and design component. And then the technology starts to blend into everyday experiences. And it used to be, if you remember, I'm probably going to show my age, I remember the DOS operating system. It was literally, it's pretty hard work. You had to go to the technology, you had to sort of reach out to it, you had to learn it, you had to be proficient in tech in order to use it. But over the years, the technology, as in the film Her, has come very close to us, and it's moving even closer. And what that does mean, what does it mean? It means that it will blend in. It blends into everyday objects. And everyday objects and experiences, emotions are going to be the thing that really count. And this is very much the domain of the designer. Again, these big companies know this. They anticipated the disappearance of technology and the closeness that it's going to come to us. So, a sort of a punchline in the middle of the presentation. When I was thinking of why is it happening, why is it happening now, an analogy came to my mind. Is that basically, like in financial services, companies hedge. When they buy in currency, they buy very often the opposite position in the markets in order to hedge themselves against volatility. Well, what happens with these big companies buying and simply buying into design is they basically do this as a hedge against disruption. So companies buy into design and designers as an insurance policy, as a hedge against idea disruption. Have a quick read. So in my 10 years as a consultant and before that the work I did on the doctorate which led to the book, I've noticed that there is basically a very poor understanding of where designers are coming from the business side of things. Very, very poor indeed. And it kind of continues to this day, still in many ways. So that was kind of one of the reasons why I decided to dig a little bit deeper. And that's why this thing came to be. So I've looked at the companies that you see on the left in pretty big detail, talking to some interesting folks, and then working with my company bioengineers as well. Had a quant study, loads of ethnography in the School of Design up in Newcastle in the UK. And basically, this came to be because I was dissatisfied with the focus on tools, methods, and techniques in the whole discussion. What was missing to me was the cultural understanding, was the understanding of who are these people as a group, as a social group. What kind of values, what kind of beliefs, what kind of attitudes do they have that are different to everybody else, that are as well helpful in business and an organization domain. And if you think about the importance of organizational cultures, it's everybody's talking about it. And if you read the recent, well, not so recent, but an important book by Eric Schmidt in Google, How Google Works. The first chapter is talking about the culture. And indeed, organizational cultures are very important. When you think about what's really unique and what's really driving these things, is very often things like on the right-hand side, profession and occupation. These are like rivers flowing through businesses. And if you think about the tenure of employees these days, you have 1.1 years at Google, 2 years at Apple. So these people just stay there for a little while and then move on. So of course, they will be aligned much more closely to who they are as a professional than what the company stands for. So the professional cultures have really become, or becoming even more important than they used to be. So I urge you next time to, when you're looking at organizations and places, to think about and trace what professions are driving the discussions, what professions are driving the power struggle internally. So basically, my work resulted in this description of the design attitude in 5 major elements, this being one of them. I believe absolutely paramount. The ambiguity and uncertainty that's inherent in the business world these days is here to stay. And the reaction is how are we going to respond to that? And designers are very good indeed at it. I call it the willingness to engage in a process that is not completely predetermined and where outcomes are unknown or uncertain. So it's not so much an ability, but it's this attitude, this willingness to engage in something that you don't know how it's going to end. If you talk to managers, they usually want to know exactly from day one how the process is going to unfold and what's going to come in the end. Designers, in my experience, possess this attitude which actually is contrary to that and says, look, I actually prefer not to know exactly where I'm going to land, because if I can surprise myself in the process, that means there is a chance I'm going to come up with something original. Otherwise, if I'm not prepared to surprise myself, it's very unlikely I'm going to produce something completely original to the world. So this embracing of ambiguity and uncertainty is absolutely key to the culture that designers have in the profession. So, a little bit of an introspection. Are you comfortable with an ambiguous and uncertain process? Just ask yourself. Is experimentation for trial and error something you value highly? Or not knowing precisely how a project is going to unfold makes me uncomfortable. So these are just a few questions from the survey I carried out, which actually show amazingly, robustly different results from designers and non-designers along these lines. Another aspect of the design attitude, or the design culture, if you will, is this deeply held conviction that it's really, really important to come up close, very, very close to the user, to the consumer. And it's this naive almost, but very importantly naive way of looking at things. So just basically saying, I'm not going to use too many methods, tools, and formulaic structures in order to understand human beings and fellows that live in this world. But actually, I'm going to immerse myself and become very close to what they stand for, what's important to them. So it's a really deep empathy. So yes, there's talk about empathy. When I started researching this in 2001, nobody was mentioning it at all. But I've come to realize that it's really this really deep level, this almost suspicion surrounding your beliefs and your idea of what the world is like, and seeing it and trying to understand it through other people's eyes. So the previous chart was, keep calm and we have no rules. Indeed, very, very much so. The designers I've worked with, they like to do sometimes the processes, but they're not really wedded to them. They are quite ready to drop them if they're not helpful to whatever they're trying to achieve. They're much more interested in things like this, things like coming up close to the interest. Just a very, very, very quick example, if you're aware of this. A couple of students from Stanford B School were developing this incubator for the developing world. And they developed one with a scale on the thermometer. And when they took it to do some in situ research in India, they figured out something quite interesting. Is that all people there, most of the people there, have a tendency to handicap the dosages that doctors are prescribing to them because they think Western medicine is too strong. So when they had sort of 37 degrees on the thermometer, people would put a lower figure, so they wouldn't sort of heat it up to 37 degrees, obviously rendering the whole device useless or dangerous even. So that sort of allowed them to then redesign this, and basically the indicator just says, okay, now where the temperature is right, or the 37 is reached. That little insight, that sort of deep empathy-driven insight, enabled this whole thing to work, and it's become very popular. Another thing, my wife is a doctor. She works with MRIs, but none of them look like this. He says, I wish they actually were like that one, because that would help us enormously in our patients. It's a simple intervention on the face of it, but it's absolutely profound. It has big consequences of how quickly they can turn around patients, how happy the kids were in this environment. Actually, some of the poor kids that were being treated or being looked at to these MRIs, so they said they wanted to come for more. So that just gives you an idea. So that's driven through this deep insight and deep attitude. So another aspect of design attitude is the power of the five senses. And it's a willingness to engage all five senses and to work with a complete aesthetic understanding of reality. So, if you think about yourself, and definitely about myself, I was asked almost to leave at the door of my offices all these of the senses that I normally use in my day-to-day life, and just take the sense of sight and hearing to my workplace. You know, just reading, listening, talking to people, but not really smelling the solutions or tasting. But indeed, designers are very much into the whole plethora and whole spectrum, and like also the bandwidth of empathy, the bandwidth of innovation, because that and this closeness to the consumer, coupled with this embrace of the five senses, enables you to really come up with really interesting, novel solutions and leaps of innovation. Just to give you a very quick example. So this is basically an experiment by students at Royal College of Art. How, what electricity could sound like. The more things they control, the louder the bird noises become. But actually, you know, if you think it's a bit strange, isn't it? But absolutely the point that you are using the entire spectrum to flex and to stretch your understanding of what's possible and how innovation could look like. So yes, indeed, this empathy bundle, as I call it. So you know, why do we choose? Why do many managers, many people that are not designers choose to only use two senses? It's like working with dial-up connection rather than a full fiber optic connection that is available to us to innovate and to come up with great things. The other aspect is playfulness and bringing things to life. It's very much the ability and the willingness, again, to unleash the kid within each of us. And designers have this, I would say, probably slightly privileged different position in society, in many societies, that slightly single of designers of a bit strange, bit left field, which actually is a very, very useful thing, because it enables them to come up with really interesting solutions and be playful, be strange, be experimental. Whereas this very often isn't allowed as a sort of societal construct to the other professions. So that in itself is a very helpful thing if you think about pushing the envelope of innovation forward. So this is one of my favorite quotes. So the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression. Think about it. It's really quite profound. A few examples of this at work. In this is just a fine example of course joy and playfulness at work. Why don't we do this? Why didn't we do this earlier? If you might remember this example, the handle on this computer is totally useless because it was so heavy. So it was designed to be inviting. So again, the playfulness translated into a product, translated into a pretty big success, and sort of a turning point for Apple. Again, just a very quick example of playfulness. And this is again a great experiment.
So the thing that ties together all my work is happiness. The interactions between the product and the user, which makes them happier as a person, but also the chemical changes in the brain which make people happier. The toaster requires you to hug it during the duration of the cooking time, so you put your toast in, you have to pick it up and give it a cuddle, and you have to hold it for the duration you want to cook the toast for. It gives you back warmth and the comfort food at the end, but you have to give it some love. The smile telephone requires you to smile at it in order to receive a call or to make a call.
Initiate smile to receive call.
During the call as well, you have to keep smiling every sort of few seconds in order to stop the call from going on hold. It's a forced way of sort of smiling. It makes you kind of engage with your smiling self. In the morning when the alarm goes off, you can't switch the alarm off until you take the two actuators and lift them above your head for 2 minutes. Inside here there are accelerometers and Bluetooth the data back to the base and tells it the position it's in. And after 2 minutes, a person experiences a cortisol decrease and a testosterone increase in the brain, which makes you feel more confident and more happy and more able to deal with stress.
I love it. It's a great example of. And the last element of the design attitude of culture is creating new meaning from complexity. So it's this willingness to reconcile multiple and often contradictory domains. If you think about it, very often in this day and age, you have massive specialization. People are really specializing in one single domain and becoming total experts in it. It does help very often, but designers actually do something different. They engage with a plethora of different domains simultaneously. So I was talking about the very different senses. There will be financial data, there will be user input data, there will be aesthetics, there will be all sorts of different things which are very often not on the same level. They are sort of like comparing apples and pears. But the willingness to engage in the process and willingness to engage all of those different disparate things often results in a leap of understanding and a leap of what things, processes, services could mean. Just a great example of that is turning a piece of consumer waste, which is this sort of clear PET bottle, into a light source by just filling it with some water, putting some bleach in. Even though this wasn't sort of a trained designer, I would say, Alfred Monte, but it very much epitomizes the approach that's inherent in the culture of really combining different things and making okay, this isn't just about form, actually it's about the meaning of what things are and how they perform in the world. And you will be aware of this example. It's again a brilliant example of a leap in meaning. It wasn't tinkering with the shape of the helmet. It was actually creating a new experience and creating a new meaning of what it means to wear a helmet. You don't need to have something on your head in order to have a helmet on. Again, by combining different sources, so innovation in airbags and thinking about fashion, thinking about what women wanted, needed, and so triangulating that and coming up with a solution that is a leap in meaning. So, a very quick recap. So basically, all the things on the left-hand side, so we have embracing ambiguity and uncertainty is a big theme in how the cultural designers work. They have deep empathy, and the ability and willingness to engage with that is absolutely crucial. This last sort of centimetre closer to the consumer makes a huge difference in how we come up with really interesting and important insights. Then you have the engagement of all the 5 senses, rather just a couple, gives you the bandwidth with which you can innovate, the interesting connections that can happen in the process. You have the playfulness and the ability and willingness to just be a little bit out there and experimental and not too serious, just fooling around. And then this willingness to combine different domains into a coherent whole that is going to deliver the leap of great products and services. So professional attitude is professional culture, in other words, a set of values, beliefs, and mental models uniquely suitable for a complex and disruptive world we live in today. So going back to the question posed in the title of the presentation, why now and why design? I think it's very much the part of the answer that there's certain inherent elements in culture that designers possess that is uniquely placed to handle the complexity and dynamism and amazing fluidity of the world we live in today. So if you could only remember 3 things. So buying into design and designers, by these guys displayed, but not only, is very much a hedge against idea disruption. It's an insurance policy against disruptive world. Professional design culture gives you a unique perspective on why design, why now, and why is it important to these people. So not only the tools, techniques, and methods, which I believe can only be properly understood if you know the foundations upon which they are built. So professional design culture is actually an interesting angle to start understanding what is the contribution, why now, and why these companies want it. And lastly, managers should put more effort into understanding designers and vice versa. It's really important not only to stop at the goals of tools and methods, but really start to think about people that we work in organizations as professionals that have certain belief systems, mental models, ideas about how things work. And that, if you do that, you have the opportunity to work together better, more constructively, more positively, and come up with better solutions. So thank you very much, and please ask any questions here. Thank you.